Parashat Naso, like Parashat Bamidbar in some ways, consists of a lot of numbers and a lot of people, and then the Nesiim, which is 12 Nesiim, doing the same thing over and over again. We understand that Parashat Naso, it can be defined as being the completion of the Machaneh, of the encampment. In Bamidbar, they counted all the Jews, they prepared the Leviim. The beginning of Naso completes the jobs of the Leviim who are situated in a different part of the camp. They surround the Mishkan, and the second half of the Pasha consists of the Chanukat HaMizbeach, the Nesiim. We've finished the entire encampment, including the Mishkan, which is at the center, and then the Nesiim bring the Korbanot. In the middle of the Pasha, there are 4 sections that deal with halachot, which is intrinsically difficult. We're still a narrative. This Parsha, Bamidbar, Naso, the first half of Parshat Balotcha, almost all of Balotcha, consists of the narrative. It's not exactly an eventful narrative, but building the Machaneh, building the Mishkan, completing the Mishkan, and then they're supposed to start moving and going to Eretz Yisrael. Sometimes there's certain halachot which are connected to that, but in the case of Naso, we have halachot which don't appear to be connected at all, and that is a difficult thing. There were 4 parshiyot of halachot. The first one is Shiluach HaTmeim. The Tmeim was sent out of the Machaneh. It's halachah that they always will be sent out of the Machaneh. Now we learned that Tmeim are not allowed in Har HaBayit, in Machaneh Shechina, in Machaneh Leviyah. So that more or less we understand. It is connected to the narrative because they were sent out of the Machaneh. In other words, when they were building the Machaneh, they were building the encampment, certain people couldn't stay. God decreed that they had to leave. So that's a set of laws which is connected to the story. The next 3 sections do not appear to be connected. There's a small section about, it's unclear what it's about, but the person who has an asham, Rashi explains that it's the completion of a pasha that appears in Vayikra, how much he has to pay. It's nothing to do with anything. And the next 2 parshiyot are the pasha of Sota and the pasha of Nazir. Why are these 2 parshiyot specifically found in the middle, not just at the end of the encampment, but in the middle of the building of the encampment, between the definition of which Jews live where, 12 Shvatim in Parashat Bamidbar, around the Machaneh Shechina, around the Mishkan, and here the Leviim, and an inner circle between the Machaneh Yisrael and the Machaneh Shechina, and we'll come at the end, how they move, and the Nesiim who bring their sacrifices to complete the Kedusha of the Mishkan. This is an obvious topic. If you look on the website of Yeshivat Acțion or the VBM, there have been a number of articles written about this, including one that I wrote myself, in which I said something which I want to say something differently today, so you don't have to bother looking at that article. But there are other very good articles by other people, because it's a topic which anyone who addresses Naso comes back to. I want to make the following suggestion. Last week, I spoke about the census in Parashat Bamidbar. I made the following declaration. I said that the census of the Jews in Parashat Bamidbar is designed to elevate the individual and not to eliminate him. It's b'mispar shemot, the gulgalotam. They didn't count people, they counted names. I think practically they did count people, but it's called b'mispar shemot. When you count names, each name is different. You're counting the number of different people. If you would count people without their names, just their noses, just their heads, you'd be merging them into an indistinguishable mass. When you count names, each person is distinct. And that's how I explain the expression sa et rosh. You lift up their heads. That was what I talked about last week. But the point was, nonetheless, that you count them as individuals in order to form a machaneh, in order to form an encampment. And they get together, they're put together into the fi mishpachotehem, the fi beit avotam, according to their families, the groups of their fathers, l'shivtehem, according to the matot, according to the tribes, and each tribe gets a place to sit. In the end, you get an encampment of all of Am Yisrael surrounding the Mishkan. The point was that, of course there's an encampment, of course there's a group, of course there's Am Yisrael, but Am Yisrael is composed of unique individuals rather than the other way around, rather than each individual is just something being scratched off from the indistinguishable mass. I think today's Parsha is talking about the exceptions to that rule. Obviously, the Tameh is an exception to that rule. The encampment, to a great extent, is forming communities, or a community that consists of communities. You have a place where you have to live. Maybe a little bit strange to us that each of the people in the Midbar had to live with his own shevet. I want to live someplace else. It's nice to have different kinds of people living together. But in the encampment of the Mishkan, the encampment of the Machaneh Yisrael, so there was the people of Dan, the people of Yehuda, the people of Naphtali. Each person lived they were the same, but they were the same ethnic group, so to speak. You're forced to live in a certain place. If one remembers the Parsha a few weeks ago of the Mekalel, the way Chazal explained it, Rashi quotes it there, it was an individual who, because his father was basically Egyptian and his mother was Mishevet Dan, he needed a place to live. He went to live with Dan. They threw him out. You don't belong. The Machaneh is a structure. It's a very structured structure. It's a very regimented structure. It has a particular shape, and each person has to live in an address that is assigned to him. So even though I emphasized a week ago that these people are unique individuals, but the unique individuals were then put into a slot. Okay, the Tameh doesn't have a slot, not because he doesn't want to. God doesn't want him to. There's something about being defiled, having tum'ah, that ejects you from the Machaneh. The point is, and it's a very important point, that the community of the Jews is a community which surrounds the Mishkan. It's a community which serves God. That's why the Mishkan is in the middle. If there's no Mishkan in the middle, then Machaneh Yisrael is not Machaneh Yisrael. It's not the encampment of the Jews. The encampment of the Jews is because the Mishkan is in the middle. Later on, in Eretz Yisrael, so the halachic nature of Machaneh Yisrael is Yerushalayim, that which surrounds the Mishkan, not Alon Shvut, not Tel Aviv. The Machaneh is Machaneh Hashem in its different levels. So for reasons which not so clear to us, but it's essential in the understanding of the Torah, Tumah and Kedusha, Tumah and Avodat Hashem are contradictory. So when a person is Tameh, till he can purify himself, it's not a rejection of the individual, it's rejection of his state. And in 7 days, if he does it right, he'll be back. But he doesn't belong in the community because the community is to serve God. It's a very important point. We've been sort of trained by modern philosophy and political philosophy to imagine the community exists in order for self-defense, perhaps, Hobbes and Locke. Community exists so that we can have trade. The community, the holy community, the community of Machaneh Yisrael exists to serve God. Certain people don't fit in. So the first parsha that we have in Naso is Shiluach Machanot, sending out the Tmeim from the Machaneh because they don't merge well. They might be individuals, but they don't merge with the others because they don't have the common goal. Skipping the short parsha of the Chayav Hasham, which is truly a mystery, I want to talk about Sota and Nazir. Start with Sota. First of all, Sota is not about Sota. It's not about the woman who is suspected of infidelity. It's about her husband. The Pasha begins Perikei Pasuk Yud Aleph Vaydaber Adonai Moshe Lemor Daber el Bnei Yisrael v'amrat alehem Ish ki tiste ishto umala bobal. It's about the man who is Machaneh. He has a claim against his wife's purported action. And notice the words that the Torah uses. Va'avar alav ruach kin'ah v'kinei et ishto v'hi nitma. Or avar alav ruach kin'ah v'kinei et ishto v'hi lo nitma. The word kinei, I think, I haven't checked the translations. I think most of us in our heads translate as being jealous. That's because we have this picture, specifically in this parsha, of a man and his wife. Somehow he's jealous of her conduct. The word kinei doesn't really mean what we would call jealousy in the sense that I'm jealous of my friend, I'm jealous of people who are more successful than me. The other person in the Torah who is Machaneh is God. God is a kel kano. I think a better translation would be zealous rather than jealous. God is Machaneh. He doesn't appreciate. He doesn't agree that the Jews should serve other gods. He's not jealous of the other gods. They don't even exist. But he is zealous of the kavod that one is supposed to give God. And God demands of us to be exclusively connected to him. Adam shemechaneh be'ishto is a man who is holding his wife to a very high standard. And the expression that's used here, there's no question in my mind that it's meant to be negative. V'avar alav ruach kina. Why is he mechaneh? Because he's been infected. Avar alav. He's been infected by the spirit of zealousness. Ruach kina sounds very much like expression of Chazal, ruach shtut, or Vayetzei ruach milifnei Hashem, that affected Shaul HaMelech. It's close to depravity. It's close to insanity. Sometimes you're right, but it's not a normal state. There's a person who was in an elevated emotional or spiritual state. Avar alav ruach kin'ah. The spirit of zealousness has infected him. And in fact, in the end of the Parashat Sota, where the expression appears, Zod Torat HaKinaot. Kinaot is a plural form. This is the Torah of the zealousnesses. So the Sfona says, why is it plural? And he explains, because there really are two kinds of kinah. There could be a justified kinah, and there could be an unjustified kinah. And the pasuk there says, pasuk Chavtet, Zod Torat HaKinaot, Asher Tiste Isha Tachet Isha V'nitma, where the woman was actually disloyal to him. Oh, Isha Asher Ta'avor Alav Ruach Kinah B'kineit Ishto. Doesn't say what happened, but it's the other case. It means that he was nuts. He was actually a lunatic. He was something happened to him, ruach kina, and who kineit ishto, but hilo satata. She did not deviant behavior, and was not tamei. The parsha is not about the woman. The woman who's, if she's committed a very serious offense, there's a judicial system that takes care of that. There are many other sins in the Torah. Here it's about the fact that their married life is being disturbed, and it's being disturbed not by her purported real or non-real transgression, but by his ruach tumah. He can't live with her, and that is something which is upsetting the Machaneh, because the Machaneh is based on ish, mishpacha, shevet, and groups of shvatim. But more, I think, is what it's talking about is a person who is himself not acting according to the rules. Every Jew has a place where he lives. This Jew doesn't live in his community. He's breaking up. He might be justified, but he's breaking up the living with his wife, and therefore he's breaking up his living with others, because he chooses to be more, you might say, more firm, more zealous. He's something which, according to the law, he didn't have to do, or maybe even wasn't supposed to do. There is no evidence against his wife. It could be nothing even happened. He's not aware of anything happened. Because of her conduct causes him to be very suspicious of her. It's not the legally mandated response, it's his spirit that he probably sees himself as being better, or more zealous, perhaps more religious, more connected to God. But he's separating himself from the norms of the community. And the same thing is true, probably more positively, without the negative connotation that the psukim do apply to the person who's Machaneh b'ishto. The same thing applies to the Nazir. A Nazir is somebody who has his own norms. He's firmer. He's more religious. He's more strict than the legal Jew, not just the average Jew, but the legally halachic Jew. There is nothing wrong with drinking wine. Torah is in favor of drinking wine when it's appropriate. But he is Nazir mi sheichar v'yayin. He has separated himself from sheichar and yayin. There are parts in life where a person becomes tamei necessarily. It's a mitzvah to bury somebody. Someone's dead, the people who bury him are going to be tamei, etc., etc. But this person is separated from all tumah completely, all the time. And gadel pera sa'ar rosho, for reasons which I'm not going to discuss now. What's the symbolism of letting your hair grow long? But he is conducting a religious life that's different than everybody else's. Presumably in his case, he wants to be closer to God. He's told to live in Machaneh Yisrael. In effect, it's not what he's saying, but in effect he wants to live in Machaneh Leviyah, or perhaps in Machaneh Shechinah. He wants to be a kind of a Kohen, but different than the laws of Kohanim. He wants to be a kind of Levi, but different than the laws of Levi. Both of these individuals are by their own choice not finding themselves in the Kahal, in the Machaneh, in the structure, the very, very structured version of how Jews are supposed to live. Each individual submerges himself to a certain extent to live in his group, in his class, and these people don't have any class. The Tameh has no class because God has thrown him out, because to be a class in Judaism you have to be connected to God. And the Machaneh et Sota, not the Sota, but the Machaneh et Sota, the person who is bringing his wife before God in order, because he wants to break the structure. And the Nazir, who simply leaves the structure because he thinks that he can have a personal relationship with God, those are people who don't find their places in the Machaneh. What do we do about that? So you could say, hit them over the head and make them live there. No, the Torah recognizes that something needs to be done. These people have to be dealt with. If we talk about the Machaneh et Sota, the man who brings his wife up and causes charges, the Torah says, yeah, we make it go away. One of two things will take place if the procedure of the drinking of the cursed waters of the Sota takes place. Either she will die, in which case the problem goes away, or v'nikta v'nizva azara, which seems clear is meant to say that he'll be cured of his jealousy. Their marriage will be reconstructed in a positive way. In fact, it will be fruitful, and she will have children. That's meant to make it go away. The Nazir, the Torah has more positive attitude towards the Nazir. We don't necessarily want him to stop doing it. We don't yell at him to stop being a Nazir. It's a good thing. The Torah calls him kadosh, among other things. In the connection with the hair, specifically not with the yayin, not with the wine, but connection with the hair, it says, Asher yazir Hashem kadosh yeh gadel peras arosho. He's called holy. A few things should be remembered. One, it's intrinsically temporary. The Nazir, by definition, has to say how many days is going to be a Nazir. It's true, not in the Torah, but if one looks in Masechet Nazir, there is something called the Nazir Olam, but it's not mentioned in the Torah. It's learned from, it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Has no basis in the Torah. A person could be a Nazir forever. The Gemara says that Shmuel HaNavi was a Nazir Olam. Avshalom was a Nazir Olam, but it's not in the Torah. The Nazir of the Torah is intrinsically a temporary stage, but you get to choose how long. It's very individualized. Even Nazir, which is already an individual, he's not a regular Jew, and it has laws. He doesn't do anything he wants. If he wants to be a Nazir from chicken, there's no such thing. But to be a Nazir from yayin, the Torah recognizes a possibility. But you see how many days it has. In the end, you have to bring a korban, in which case it ends. If it doesn't end, you'll never have the sacrifice at the end. The point is to have an end. It's called milot. In the language of the Torah, it's called Yemei Nizro. You count, and you get to the end. When you get to the end, that's when you get to bring a korban. That's when you get to cut off your hair and burn that in the mikdash as well. So one, it's also temporary. The Torah is saying this person has perhaps a legitimate aspiration to be different, to be an individual. We find a way to include him. We have laws what to do, and in the end he returns to his status. What we have here is the Torah dealing with the fact, the same problem I actually raised a week ago. How do individuals fit into society? So the norm is you have your individual identity and you put yourself into society. You become part of a greater thing than the individual, not by denying yourself, but by contributing and forming a relationship and being a part of a family, part of friends, part of a machaneh, part of a shevet, part of a unit, which then becomes Klal Yisrael, all surrounding God. But there are individuals who, they don't connect. They're too individualistic for one reason or another. These are two cases. One, I think, is basically seen by the Torah as negative. The other one is seen as being basically positive, although I think most of us know that the Gemara had a mixed attitude towards the Nazir. The Torah says he brings a sacrifice which is called chatat. Normally we would assume that a chatat has a chet. That's why it's called chatat. And so the Gemara asks, why? It gives a reason that not drinking wine isn't a good thing. It's a bad thing. More instructive is the story of Shimon ben Shetach, who said that he only met one Nazir that he approved of. Depends on what your motivation was. Some people want to be special because they want to be special. So then maybe we should say they should stop being special. But some people have a real need to express something which is not part of the standard Torah. And there, Machaneh, who met the Nazir min ha-darom, a particular person who was fighting his own connection to hedonism, his own connection to what he saw as his own beauty when he looked at in his reflection, kissed him on his head and said, Kazeh you will be so. That's a good Nazir. After all the Nazirim who he had met previously. Torah has a mixed attitude. Chazal have a mixed attitude towards the Nazir, but it's a recognized good thing. But again, so you deal with it. There's a way that he doesn't want to live among the Jews. He wants to live by himself. Nazirut is almost intrinsically not just individual, but by yourself. It's hard to imagine. There's no community of Nazirim. Other religions have what they call Nazirim. Monks, they got to live in a community. Jewish Nazirim live by themselves. There's no place in the Machaneh Yisrael. There's Dan, there's Naphtali, there's Yisachar, there's Zvulun. There's no place called where the Nazirim live. The Leviim live with the Leviim. Kohanim live with Kohanim. Nazirim, you're stuck. You're out of the framework. So the Torah deals with what it does. But that it recognizes it as a good thing, but also refuses to allow it to destroy the community. So we'll find a way to fit it out. And the end of the 30 days or the 60 days, Stam Nazirut is 30 days. Normally it's 30 days. He comes back, and who takes care of him? The Kohen, the person who represents God. Also the Sota, who takes care of the Machaneh and the Sota. It's the Kohen. You come before God. You're allowed to come before God. You're invited to come before God. You come before God, and we deal with it. Either we make the Sota go away, the problem goes away. In the case of Nazir, he offers a sacrifice. He did something positive, and he sacrifices that, the growing of his hair. He became a very special individual. He looks different. He grew something. He created something. Good. You cut it off, you sacrifice it to God, and you go back to finding your place where God meant you to live within the community. That's what I think these Parashiyot are doing in Parashat Naso. It's how do you build a community? What do you do with the individuals, with the strange individuals? What do you do with the one who's not willing or doesn't want or has aspirations which separate himself from the community? So we could just shoot them, but we deal with them. The Torah deals with it, tries to understand whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, and finds a way to, without destroying the Machaneh, in the end, Klal Yisrael, the community of Israel, is what's being formed here. And the community of Israel is the community that serves God, the covenantal community that serves God. Those who serve God in their own way, not through the covenant, not through the laws of the Torah, but in their own way, they're more zealous than others. They're more ascetic than others. They have different laws for themselves, are a problem for the covenantal community. And that's why this parsha gives us a certain method of how to deal with that, which is a complicated method. It doesn't give it validation, but it doesn't give it condemnation either. It tries to reform the connection of this unique individual back so he also should become part of the community. And that's how the parsha continues. And that's why at the end of these parashiyot, these two parashiyot, the next parsha is by the Ber Adonai Moshe Lemor, the Ber Adonai Lemor, Ko tavarechu et bnei Yisrael. The Kohanim now can give a bracha to bnei Yisrael, who are the community. Yivarechecha Yair Yisa Shem Panav Elecha Besamu et Shmi al bnei Yisrael. The name of God will be al bnei Yisrael, not on these super unique individuals, but on the Klal. Besamu et Shmi. The name of God is placed on bnei Yisrael. Va'ani abarachem. And then we continue to the completion of the Mishkan, and the Jews are about to take off to Eretz Israel. We know that they're not going to get there so quickly, but the Pasha assumes that this holy community is now going straight to Eretz Israel, and at the point we are now, it sounds like a good venture, and we're hopeful that it'll succeed, even though we all know that someplace between Baalotcha and Shlach, in 1 week or 2 weeks, there's going to be a terrible falling apart of the plan. But in the meantime, right now we are hopeful because we've taken all these people, the unique individuals, the unique anti-community individuals, and we've put them back into the community in order to serve God together.